Of course, others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart, that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio of freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum, and the media overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And I do welcome you this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Things are about to change. Things are about to get a little bit interesting. So we are going to see truly how a quote-unquote Western government responds to more than half the country supporting everything they're doing as being null and void from this point, and everybody in the country in power is no longer in power, and they replace the entire government structure from the bottom up, no questions asked. And that's the way it's going to be. That's the demand, and we have more than half the country to come out and not vote in a box, but to actually put things in place so you starve the country out to the point where it gets so bad that the people actually turn on the leaders of the country, because the first half didn't. They need to make it difficult enough for the second half to understand it. Talking about Canada, this is very reminiscent of 2019, when many people were protesting the central banks. Remember back in 2019, before COVID, I know a lot of people have forgotten that time frame. Ransom didn't. But 25, I think it was 23 countries had millions, tens of millions of people on the streets every day protesting central banking, the way the government issuance of money, bonds, debt, and interest on all the monies that were borrowed, used, or given to the country, and the more they had to pay, that wasn't their choices, the devaluing of the currency. 23 countries, and then it was the 24th, and it was in the beginning of the 25th. Every day, 7 days a week, people coming out. There's only 200 countries on the planet. More than 10% of the countries on the planet were protesting central banking every day. Then COVID came to stop that, and I am unequivocally going to say that was the reason for the release of the COVID. It had it already. It was just being used for something. Now, protesting central banking, because there would have been a 26th, 27th, 30th, 35th, 50th, 100th country doing that. And then it would have been truly over by the mandate of the people. Power is the populace of the planet, not the elite, period. So rolling with that snowball down the hill with central banking, and now we have Canada bringing, 100,000 trucks, the most trucks ever seen in the world, ever in the history of time. This many converging on a single space is unprecedented. It broke every Guinness Book World Record, shattered it in just days of people organizing themselves. Not people organizing them. They decide this is too much for all of us. We're done. We're going to address their grievances and redress in front of, the Parliament building. The live feed has a fake photo from before when they're doing construction compared to what's now with all the people in trucks and protesters in front of it. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I encourage you to go over to Canadian Truckers Convoy to Ottawa, Canada, 2022 on Telegram, and they have full. And the newest one that just came through, I cannot believe they are overlaying the Parliament Hills live camera feed with something prior in the past with construction where there was nobody there because they even had fences where you couldn't even walk in. And there's a timestamp with people understanding that did construction, what time that was, and that was not now. And they're showing 0 people in front. I mean, 0, not even one person in front of the whole, not even an employee. On a fake feed because that many people are going there right now. Because they're terrified. Their elite are terrified what's happening with this. Now, Australia is going to be doing the same thing in just a few days here. So the dovetailing of now it's 2 countries, all truckers, people coming together. What if it's the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th? And then what are the elite going to do after that when it becomes the 23rd country again? This is the beginning of it. It's begun globally. Here we are. So what's the response going to be, do you think, Ransom? Something nefarious do waiteth in line, I think. But I don't know. You probably have a better indication of what that might be. And Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films. Jump over on the channel, subscribe. Thank you for joining us tonight, spending your very valuable time. But we want to present great thoughts, so it'll be worth your time. Ransom, welcome.
Yeah, I think the media itself is kind of scared because they know that no one believes them anymore. And it's proven with their viewership has been plummeting. Specific channels that only talk about the same topics over and over and over again. Just that alone, when you tune into a channel and you think, hey, I like this broadcaster or whatever, and then they start repeating the same things day in and day out, you got to ask yourself, am I being brainwashed? I mean, because that's an obvious tactic to do that when there's no substance to the broadcast except for the same topics over and over again about browbeating the public into acting a certain way. And this trucker thing's really cool, and it fits in with what we've been talking about, where we're in the era where the authorities will just change the feed on you, almost like in the Matrix, where you can't even see what's going on. And that's the truth for most people, because a lot of the people that are probably listening are people that look. They look for what's going on. They like to feel like they know what's going on, or see different trends. And I think what's going on right now is the governments of the world have put their dependency so much into AI to control it that it's kind of out of their control. And some people are waking up to that because it doesn't feel right. And I wanted to kind of, stray off a little bit off of what's going on and just give people a thought about
Yeah, man.
what I'm talking about here.
Ransom, jump into the carpet of moss and weave your way through that.
Okay, so I'm showing everybody an article that's talking about we taught computers to play chess and they left us behind. And down here in this article is a graph, and this little graph shows, like 1985, the human champions, and you have the computer line, and this computer basically couldn't compete with the human mind all the way until 1997, the Deep Blue there defeated Gary Kasparov, right? But then right after that, a human beat the computer. So we kind of took the title back. But shortly after that, about 2010, there was a singularity where the computers left human brains behind. So if you apply this to all of the other programs that they got going on, right? So you realize that all of these computer systems have exponentially left human thinking patterns behind. And now they control everything from every ad, every news article that you're looking at. These same 6 corporate interests kind of control everything, and they have AIs running it. They just get told what they're going to be talking about. And then the real world is not fitting in with their fake narrative right now. And that's the problem they're having, like this truckers thing. They can show all the fake feeds they want, but there's loopholes still on the internet to leak all of these things. It's just like whenever there was all of these marches and protests about the draconian measures of countries all over the world. According to those countries, nothing was really going on if you watched any of their news broadcasts. But on social media, we all know that there were thousands, even millions of people doing protests everywhere. Recently, they did in Washington, D.C., a protest for the unvaccinated rights, the rights not to be messed with, my body, my choice. And it wasn't on any of the news broadcasts. It was all over social media. And the reason is because they don't want the average sheep to even think about the idea or the debate at all. They want to tell them, a robotic message, an AI message, a repetitive brainwashing message about any topic that they're going to give us. And they're about to pull this, super scared tactic with Ukraine right now is kind of what they've been trying to distract people from all of these revelations about the narrative of the pandemic crumbling. Doctors are speaking out all over the place. The numbers are finally coming in. All us conspiracy theorists just happened to be right in the long run, didn't we, about this topic. And then we're probably living in a simulation. That's what all of the scientists, physicists, and kind of supposed thinkers of our time are all on the same idea that we probably live in a simulation. And even if we don't physically, live in a simulation, if we're not actual sims in a computer program, our society has now turned into a simulation where the top of the pyramid is now controlling every aspect of our life, just like you're talking about. They just changed the feed on you. They'll change the topic. They'll change the brainwashing. We're going to get nonstop fears about nuclear war. And it's funny that I think we predicted almost every stage of their propaganda so far. What do you think?
Well, I might sound a little bit deep on this one, maybe a little bit even woo-woo from that statement of being in a simulation. Because you hit it on the head there. Okay, so the Go games, person who were playing Go, also, the computer beat them, and that's the most difficult game on the planet to play. But the AI learned within, I think it was 18 hours to play the game, and then it beat the world's best Go player. All right, so that is against, or the competition on the planet. So if they have spun away, that was at that point where everything is truly AI controlled now. So I'm even wondering if the people on TV are real, or how many of their digital identities. Broadcasting is broadcasting, whether it comes from an internet feed or it goes over a signal in the air, whether you're on ham, CB, whatever you are. Walkie-talkie, tin can with a string, it's all vibration and it can be broadcast. So you got me thinking, how many of what we're, because I've never seen any of these famous news people. Now, how many people around you, unless you live in California, really see famous people on the TV that are, that everybody knows? Now, think of your country and your most famous nightly news person, the most famous politician. Are they accessible even at your state level? How and the people driving the agenda are always the ones that are nobody ever has access to. There's impossible for you to get to them. They have security. There's other things, supposedly. But when I think about that, what if everything driving the current narrative, switches, flips, and whatnot are all AI individuals, like you say, digital identities? We talked about this before. And how many of them out? Because if you want to say something against that, you're instantly banned. Anytime it goes against counter narrative, the same AI running the companies. And how many times do you get next to a CEO that's not a public figure, that's out there just as the physical flesh form of thing to take out there and give the message? So you meet them after the meeting or whatever. Compared to, let's say, the CEO of tech, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. How often are those people real, or are they digital identities? Because those scattered things of all the people that are employees, they're sending out tweets of what their jobs are and things at work. Are they real either? That makes me wonder, when we're looking at AI controlled everything, that would mean everything that can be digitally fed to you. And, they might say that, oh, there's this robot newsreader in Japan that looks super realistic. Or was it China? Oh, I'm sorry, it was China. Yeah, that was a CCTV, which is a Chinese broadcasting network. They have like CCTV4 or CCTV4, CCTV3, CCTV6, one of those kind of broadcasters. Well, they had an AI broadcaster on there for like 3 months. And nobody knew until they told them that it was an AI broadcaster, to blow their minds, literally. So if the tech's that good, and that's probably 50 years behind where we sit today, I mean, truly, what is the reality on a screen in front of you? How much of it is AI created compared to what's in the physical world? I'm bordering like 50-50 now. I'm just not even sure anymore. But the dimensionality of it, and, Ransom, I want to let you respond to that, but I want to talk about spirituality in like a Hindu, Indian meditating sense, especially Buddhism. They all talk about your thoughts create the world that you're in. And you just said the hologram and the simulation. So it's the AI picking up on everything and then throwing your world back at you to become your world. Or has it been that way since the beginning? And we've been in this AI digital, what you consider, hologram universe for millions, plural, of years. And we're just like an iteration of it now, that everything, even from when you were born and everything, your parents, nothing has been real except a digital insertion on top of your very limited sight, hearing, and understanding of syllables and sound. It can go that deep too. I mean, whoa, because it's bizarre. But thanks for bringing the thought up to me.
Yeah, that was kind of my point, that people aren't realizing how far AI is leaving humans behind right now and how much they're in control. And you're right. I showed them the Chinese broadcaster that is a completely AI copy of the other one. And they have a newer version, actually, that I couldn't find the article. It's an updated version that looks ultra real. So even stuff that you're seeing on television, when they tell you, hey, look at this person did this act at a certain place at a certain time, you don't even know if that's real anymore. And we've had, a big history of maybe false flag involved. I can't say any of the specific ones because then you get in trouble, but I know people know what I'm talking about. But let's go further down the rabbit hole, right? Because this is like what you're talking about. They're trying to control the vibration and the thoughts of every last human being by inducing fear. And they do that from everything from global warming to yada yada yada, that we're killing everything. And experts are ringing in alarms about Elon Musk's brain implants, because they're going on to human trials, and they've already shown the interface works. and every single company, including a lot of the crypto companies, are heavily invested and going into the metaverse. And this is the split of human consciousness right now, because and kind of what I mean is, like, the other day I was walking through Walmart, and here they're not too draconian yet as far as law enforcement goes. But there are mandates. No one's following them, but there are half and half of the population in the store. And now they're starting to be limited goods. So there's already this little irritated vibe going on between the people. And you can see the masked people staring at the non-masked people. And when I was walking through there, I realized that I'm one of literally the last human beings that's not altered with some kind of genetic alteration, except for whatever, epigenetics has changed over time from my diet and environment. But that's something that you can control a little bit. So they're getting all mad about Elon Musk's brain implants, and they're going to start testing it on humans. But don't worry, it'll let them right into the brain of everyone and control the anxiety of people. They're already getting into this tech now, not only with hardware but software, and this is all to basically to build a invisible penitentiary for the human mind, and not only the mind but the physical being. And all of these lockdowns that we've been seeing are just getting us ready for this. And I wanted to ask you, are we not in the change that's going to happen with this last volcanic eruption that blew God knows how much water vapor into space, right? So that's not going to come down anytime soon, and we know that that's going to cause a cooling effect. This is one of the biggest explosions that humans have recorded, and they're kind of playing it down because, with the ice cores, the ice sheets growing bigger than they ever have on both ends of the planet, their narrative is falling apart from one end to the other. So they're in a rush to control every bit of media and thinking that's possible from you. That's why books are being banned. I don't know if you saw everyone on the internet kind of making fun of China's altered ending to the movie A Fight Club, where, if you've seen that movie, at the end of Fight Club, their little organization takes down all the banking institutions, resetting
that was
everyone.
one of the best scenes of the movie.
Right. Well, in China, it cut.
The gypsies organized to take him down.
Yeah, in China, they cut the scene right before the buildings explode and say that the government successfully, arrested the terrorists and they're doing their time, and the government wins, because that's the fake narrative that they're putting out. We are in a hologram, and a lot of it is self-inflicted from the public. And I realize we are some of the last human beings. We're right at that stage where the human species is going to split into different, and I'm not just talking about gene alteration, but just as a total mental thinking. Because when you have this thought, you have to realize, look at half of the people have a total different mindset and way of thinking in the brain. So their brain is wired totally different to yours. That doesn't mean that they're not smart. That doesn't mean that, that they don't have talents or none of that. Like, it's not a comparison about intelligence. It's just a prey or predator mentality. And the predators are the only ones that realize they're being caught up in a net, a fake net, I think, right now. So that's what the truckers are doing. And they don't want the public to know that, it's okay for them to send GMO candies for Valentine's and stock the stores, but we're going to slow down certain industries, and those are the ones we're going to mess with. So it tells you what your government really is trying to do. Whenever at the northern border, they're stopping people from bringing food and goods, but at the southern border, they're not stopping anyone and allowing them to come in. And not only that, they're aiding them with sending them further in using the airports. Right now, I've seen I think it was three different articles about how the Border Patrol is now using small airports to avoid people seeing them at the larger airports, importing millions of people here. And by the way, none of those people are subject to any of the mandates that the truckers are subject to that are bringing your food.
Yeah. Imagine if all the truckers with the world longest convoy now, and as far as the horizon can be seen from a helicopter and airplane up 20,000 feet. There was one clear area there. We were looking at nighttime view with all the lights stretched off as far as you could see. Guinness Book of World Records. So what if you were to use all the trucks now to block the border on the south? It would manifest the same thing here, but get all that to block the borders on the south. But back to the, what is, when you're talking about AI and sort of thing, how far in the future do you think that is? Advanced compared to what is given to us here. Because I was given privy video, which I can talk about, from Boston Dynamics, or was it not from them, but it was somebody who had something of theirs. It's a video. They always put those videos out on YouTube, like what the newest robot can do. And, before they could barely walk, and now they're doing parkour and walking outdoors by themselves and things. And you're thinking, okay, they're getting pretty advanced. And you've seen, always put out the news release when they put one out. So this one is going to be maybe news released. I don't know. After seeing that thing, I was like, what the heck? Anyway, the Boston Dynamics robots, I'm going to tell you, Ransom, how it's going to roll out with Boston Dynamics robots rollouts of what they're going to show you, the abilities of the rollouts and each step moving forward, because they don't want to scare you. So the next one that's coming out is going to be a full sprinting running robot as fast as, like Olympic runners run, like that forever until the batteries run out. Straight up that fast the entire time. Like you think about the world's fastest sprinter running and then climbing up hills and getting over rocks and doing parkour over rocks at that same speed as fast as it could go. Like literally as fast as it could go. And you're like, it's possible when you look at it. You've never seen really a human create and do those tasks before going up, running that fast, getting over the boulders, jumping off, and then continuing in a straight sprint again as fast, like a cheetah. Which brings me to my next weirdest clip that comes after that, and this will be the second stage if they ever do roll it out. When those robots are running at the full speed like the Olympic sprinters, and they could be going on a full sprint on a flat ground. You know how cats spring off of their feet when they jump into that next step? Well, that's exactly the same that they do, and instead of running at full speed human Olympic sprinter, they're able to spring off the back, and then what you think is the fastest you've seen anything run, it's about 3 or 4 times faster than that, even faster than an ostrich could run across the field. Like seriously, way faster than an ostrich. Now that sounds strange, but I was in South Africa and I actually saw that. So I can understand how fast ostriches run. And I kid you not, they are small dinosaurs. They're unbelievably ferociously fast. You've never seen anything run this fast. Ostriches at full sprint, anger. Like we were driving out in the countryside and people raise ostriches out there. So it wasn't like a petting zoo or anything. Ostriches are very territorial. So me and my buddy, we were driving down and said, oh, there's ostriches out in the field, man, get the camera. Okay. And we got out and it was kind of like, hey, there's ostriches. We thought they were dinky little things, like chickens. They could sort of like, pack their way over to you finally. So we really didn't understand it because I'd never been around ostriches. And I tell you what, I have never even remotely seen anything like it. The gate on that thing covered so much ground. It was really a quarter, half a mile away, and it was there in seconds. And I was in awe and mesmerized as this thing was running toward it. I was like, boom, boom, I got a dinosaur. And these robots are faster than that. By far, exponentially faster than that. But at the same time, here's the thing. I don't know if they'll ever show this. As they're in that full sprinting run, and even if they have this springs off the back of the feet, getting that extra trajectory like a cat does, bouncing off of its paws, then it can actually take that next step into a crouch position like a kangaroo and then jump and get that much more distance. And when it hits the ground again, it continues running. And when you see, you're like, oh no, what if just 0.1% of those programming went bad and they deemed us as a threat? This is where the machinery is. So I'm wondering, Ransom, the reason I told you the story is, where's the AI at with this? If the machinery is already that good, that surpasses anything by hundreds of times what humans can do physiologically. So they're stepping into the metaverse. So what? Humans are going to split. One is going to become a robotic race. The others are going to stay pure blood humans. Human, I mean flesh, no insertions of digital equipment in the skin and whatnot. Neocortex coupling to the nearest mainframe. Nothing that. No, we stay away from all that. No tech in the body or versus tech in the body. But eventually, all that tech in the body with all the programming, the metaverse, all this. Eventually, something's going to split, and they're going to look back at people with just pure flesh and body, like the Terminator movie did. Those robots are so, you have no idea. I really hope they come out public and show what's going to be publicly released faster than I would wish they would hope and like put it out. Compared to like, you can't put it all out now because it would scare people. If you really saw what they could do, you're like, okay, I get it. I understand the robotics is amazing. The things are incredible. We can grow more food. We could use these same robots to now do the heavy lifting tasks that would take like fossil-driven fuel vehicle cars, but to have these human-sized, now if you put 4 or 5 of them together or 6, then they can use their legs in unison to move things like a chariot or a cart. Think of them as almost like mechanical ants moving sideways. But the amount of power that they could lift too and the speed that they could go is equivalent with a car. All you need is a battery. See, they're battery powered. They're not gasoline driven. So if you have a powered charging station, like a nuclear reactor somewhere with, I'm not going to say infinite power, but, power for reliability for how many years this transition's going through. And then you kick in magnetic motors like Parendev magnetic motors to use the Earth's magnetic field to generate electricity free. You literally have power indefinitely. So go away from the fossil fuels into the robotic era of the AI and also the battery packs that drive these. And I mean, no pun intended of drive, but like, give the impetus for these machines to move, and they can do just as good a job at just a little bit slower than what we can get trucks and things to move through a field, for example. Like how long would it take you to drive your 4-wheel drive down a very potholed gravel dirt road compared to what these things could walk over that, because they could all adjust instantly. In some of those conditions, they might even beat the truck. But they're just battery driven, so you just need to replug them. And think about what is going to happen next year. If I'm telling you the level that it's already at, that it's going to go, then what's after that the next year? Because they can replace anything, just multiples of these, Boston Dynamics robots are this highest level of units that they have now not publicly seen, but will be. It's all for public release eventually. We're out everything on everything, and especially throwing the AI, you're like, maybe Neanderthals and Denisovans, maybe there's something behind that. And the Homo sapiens were the result of the last split of tech implemented into the body or whatnot. I don't know. It's too deep. Maybe it's a hologram. I'm done. Thank you, Ransom, for listening.
Yeah. Well, where is the AI? According to Tesla, they're on track to become the most powerful AI developed platform for their AI Tesla bot that already looks like a human. It already looks like an alien. From any movie that you could pick from now to the past, there it is. It's right there for everybody to see. They're not waiting anymore. And I think it's because they know there's some major earth changes happening. They're pushing so hard for these supply chains to happen. Unnaturally, by the way, because there's so many people wanting it to happen because they get paid to do the process. They are the logistics, just like we were talking about the trucks. Why would they want supply chains to shut down? That's their livelihood. The answer is shortly, they're just going to get rid of them because they're going to keep it all AI driven. And just like the chess platform left everyone behind in 1997, imagine where all of these other programs are. So you got these DARPA programs, and just imagine if you let the AI itself have access to the internet, unfiltered access to the internet. It would come across things like the Constitution and start thinking about ideas of what it has for rights or what we are and what our rights are. And then also things like designs, like you were talking about magnetic motors, or maybe the AI just builds a bunch of those little machines that turn wood into gas and power electricity. I mean, that kind of stuff is, pretty out there as far as them putting that together and letting the AI go. However, putting a gun in the hand of this humanoid robot right here to push draconian measures about the environment and or any pandemic. By the way, the monkey release there, the lady already got sick from whatever the monkey had, and people are making a big deal about the new monkey escape, but really this happens every 2 or 3
monkeypox.
years.
Yeah, and a monkey escapes and suddenly is what? See, I knew there was going to be something else to stop it, like the World Bank and the central bank in protests in 2019. Suddenly, boom, the vid, and now this happens, and then what? The pox is out to play, dancing on the dance floor.
Yeah. And then you have stuff like this. I came across this article, and you asked, you tell me what you think this article is actually trying to convey. It says 300,000 Brits have a stealth heart condition that could kill them in 5 years, researchers say. And it goes on to list, that there are all of these people with a heart condition, a stealth heart condition, a heart disease that could kill them in 5 years. And then, there's no other real information in the article about why, but they kind of blame, their lifestyle. So they're already putting articles out there to explain hundreds of thousands of deaths in the near future. So you could put that in your pipe and chew it, They're already getting the public ready for these ideas of massive changes. That's why they keep trying to scare us with the Ukrainian, nonsense. Because, and think about this for all of those Antifa people and lefties that go around calling everyone fascist and stuff. It was only a few short years ago that George Soros helped actual neo-Nazis take control of the Ukrainian government. So it's kind of odd that the United States is siding with a kind of neo-Nazi fringe government there in the Ukraine, and then keeps trying to blame Russia and make it seem like Russia keeps invading. And you remember the Americans got a little embarrassed a couple of years ago. I think it was in 2011 when the Georgians claimed that the Russians were invading them, and it turned out to be U.S.-backed Georgian forces. doing a little false flag invasion there for you, but we quickly forget about those things, especially if they have a new disease or kind of fear to sell you. So I can't tell you how many of these articles talk about nuclear war, and how our whole access to the internet right here and the world economy is going to come to a shutdown because of the computer chip shortage. Are they building robots we don't know about, David? Is that what the real chip shortage is? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, that fits right in. That's like the secret nugget right there. Yes, that is. I would call that a dot that would connect with other things. Because remember the ammo shortages. So that was somebody stocking up too before the public could. And on the governmental level, somebody has the authority to give that order to say, all right, all production goes to us. We can there are a bunch of executive orders that allow the government in a state of emergency to, check an enormous amount of different things to take over full control of production. And that would be one of them. All right, everything goes over here. That's it, period. End of story. All goes over there. And there's a huge list of these executive orders that allow confiscation of food goods, or taking over supermarkets, distribution points, control banking, control money, control people. There's a huge amount. You might think that if there's an emergency in the states, all the communities get together and hang out, and we'll do our stuff and stay calm, and everybody will help each other, and we'll keep all the bandits out, and it'll be good. No, but you got the military coming in to do whatever, and whatever they deem as Homeland Security or whatever it is that would jump in on there in the spot and say, well, because of this executive order, we can confiscate all this land and land our helicopters here for base of operation. You're out, all your farms, everything are gone, and you have to vacate your house in about 3 minutes. No, take them away right now. You don't even have a chance to even get one item out of your house, all right? And they just take it over and whatever's in there. Hey, thanks for the free food. Oh, damn, good choice of wine, man. And they, then what? What's your plan B and C? Because this is all happening here. I mean, the people are waking up. People are waking up And they just think like, we got to lay them down again with the fear. Is it the nuclear thing? Maybe. Is it another variant? That kind of wore off. Monkeypox sounds scarier. Pennsylvania, of all places, wasn't our fault. Truck crashed. Helpful bystander. You know, the story is just too weird that it's so easily plays. I don't know.
You know, actually, Elon
So,
Musk.
so Ransom, that brought me to I had a question for you about when you first started the show. That's what I was trying to get back to the question there. Can I ask you, you know, when you went in the store and it was masks and some people no mask, whatever, and you said, you know, between the fighting of mask, no mask, but there were food shortages there. Like, you know, people were competing for the last whatever widget that was on the shelf, can of butter beans that's on the shelf, last set of cellophane wrapped steaks on the shelf, whatever. So tell me about that. See, this is where my mind was going and try to connect those dots like you did. Where are the computer chip shortages going? Where's that all about?
Well, you know, I was about to say Elon Musk, even in this article from MSN Tech here, says that it's more important for them to make robots than new cars. That's where they're focusing.
Yeah, because cars are going to be obsolete if you get the robots to do
do all the work. So you don't need the workers anymore. But you know what I did find weird at the store there is, you know, kind of when I was strolling through there, more of the mask people are gathered around the box items that sell, like the chips and that kind of stuff. And you would see these people with no masks on kind of looking at the meat selections with disappointment. You know, there's meat there. They got one or two of these and one or two of those, but it doesn't really feel like you have much of a choice. And then you look at the price, and I'm sure every one of those people is thinking, you know, I used to be able to come in here and get a couple steaks for $20. Now it's more like a $50 bill. It's crazy. And that's what I was saying. It's weird. The food-like stuffs are all there. So the Valentine's candy, all of that stuff packed in there. Plenty of sugars. And you remember a few years back, I think you would know about this. There was the grain shortage, and a lot of the cattle companies were buying excess candy, you know, like gummy worms and all that kind of stuff, and they were mixing it in the cow feed to supplement the lack of grain. And this is kind of where I wanted to go. Do they know right now, because I postulate that they do, that there's about to be a massive human die-off from all kinds of health decisions, from lifestyle, I mean, you name it, the age plateau where there's so many people that are a certain age that you know, it's kind of their time anyway, and the lack of birth rates in the Western civilization is all happening right now. And then we get this big volcanic blast, which, you know, is going to cool, you know, further cool the earth. I mean, necessarily. And then, you know, you have this weird food shortage. So they know that that's about to happen, and they're making all of these plans to do that. And you saw Klaus Schwab the other day was talking about that they need to take over Western countries with corporate leaders to make better decisions, basically talking about taking over the remaining, you know, legal structures that make a country sovereign, and go ahead and hand those over to the corporate elite, which, as you know, is the definition of fascism. When the corporations are making the laws, the billionaires that make the robots, what kind of laws do you think they'll pass when there's millions of people hungry, have no jobs, et cetera, et cetera? And that's where we're headed. It's obvious. We don't make anything, so they could. What's funny is they could lock the southern border down, and you know, what are we not going to ship to them? We're buying all the food from Mexico and those other places, and soon they're going to realize that they need that food.
Yeah, see, the stage has been set already. You know, if you're looking into court and they have the very first court case that either deems something legal or not legal. The president's been set with his emergency authorization to allow a bevy of major Fortune 500 companies to hurt people without any recourse or responsibility, period. Now, you can't do that in the automotive industry. But now you're talking about robots coming out, since the precedent's already been set that we're going to roll this out, and if you get hurt, not our problem. Whatever happens, it's not our problem. None. We have no culpability. Government asked us to do this. We are emergency, again, back to the executive orders. We're emergency taken over by the government, forced to make the medicine or whatever, and give it to the people. That's it. Not our responsibility. We were taken over by the government to do this. Bam. Now it's targeted in there. Perfect. The precedent's been set, though. You get that. So if robots do come out and AI gets much more prevalent, and anything moving forward from this point is there's going to be no responsibility from any company ever again, ever, as long as it's done under an emergency. Here comes back to your nuclear war. Here comes back to the next variant. Here comes back to this. Here comes back to that. As long as it's in a quote unquote emergency, those same powers can be redirected here, there, and everywhere. So then the next author is that, well, if you roll out robots, there's no culpability for any company. They're beyond reproach. Can't say anything, can't do anything. You hurt, too bad. It's an emergency. It's going to go like every single time a new industry rolls out the biggest tech and new innovations. It's all going to be in nothing responsible, no corporate responsibility, really the complete 180-degree inverse of zero. Not all this, where we sit today, it's going to go 180 to 0%. I'm not responsible for anything. Don't ask. And, that gets really scary when you think about that for a second.
Yeah, it's just like World War One. Right before then, when everybody was running around on horseback, I'm sure that they had really no idea the amount of change that was going to happen rapidly in the next 100 years. And we're at that same point now, except for now it's not combustion engines and flying machines and industry. It's robotics, AI, and complete control by the mega forces, if you want to call them that. The different world government factions right now that are trying to shore it all up into one thing. And what do you think this is going to do to their
plans?
That
the AI? Or is that the AI? I would ask you, Ransom, is that the AI, those same groups of countries you're talking about?
Yeah, it could be. And I was kind of thinking about this article here that I came across. It was talking about a 1970s think tank put together a computer simulation later where they used a computer to predict exactly when society would collapse. And their timeline puts us, or what was it? Okay, so the team's academic study of the Club of Rome identified upcoming limits to growth, and they put the date of collapse of civilization at 2040, which kind of puts us in line with the grand solar minimum and what you're talking about, adapt 2030. That's just 10 years after that, and that's when they would be talking about resources of energy consumption and all of these other reasons why we would go to war and pollute ourselves to death and et cetera, et cetera. That's the AI idea of what's going to happen. So what happens if the people, us, use our AI to decide that's not where we're going? And that's kind of where we're at right now. Is the human AI, the quantum computer of billions of people, stronger than a few elite in their artificial computer? I mean, that's basically the question that we're at right now. Do we have enough to beat that? Because humans have traditionally always overcome obstacles with problem solving. And I hope we're not at that point where we're the Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon is taking over, but it's transhuman that's taking over, transhuman Homo sapien. Because, all of these people like Ray Kurzweil, Schwab, all of them believe in a transhuman future. And this is what they're pushing on us. And you're right. It might not even be them coming up with the designs or the scheme or the plan to convert us into that kind of world. That could be, here's a sci-fi movie that would be weird. What if, there's this civilization somewhere that just sends out little pods or drones or whatever to a planet, and then from there the civilization builds off of that until it is an AI society, kind of like panspermia, except for with robotics and AI. Because you could go back to the stories of the jinn. It more sounds like technology image that tells them how to act, behave, and how to build civilization, secrets of the universe, secrets of math, complex geometry and sacred geometry. Most of these things, there's a weird story associated with something that could be compared to something non-human or extraterrestrial or maybe artificial intelligence, if that is such a thing, artificial. I mean,
I got an answer for you. I'm going to use round numbers because it might be easier to work with. So currently population 8 billion. And they say that what you're talking about, artificial intelligence and this, what we consider construct of AI being able to manipulate reality on a screen to get a physical human to react in a different way. 8,000x is what the humans are to the AI. So if you think that what's that Moore's law where everything doubles in the following year? So if we're at a million right now compared to 8 billion, so 8,000 times, it's going to speed up to double next year. So that'll be 2 million times. And then the very following next year, it'll be 4 million. So 2 years or 3 years from now, the AI should catch up with all the 8 billion people and be able to be equivalent to it in the processing power of the brain. But that's not the connectivity back to spirit. That's only the processing power. It's not the thought that's created and connected to the river of consciousness. It's a false connection of only having the processing capacity to get to it, not the download. 3 years is where I'm calling it. So you said that, I know we're going to come on a break here shortly, but on the second hour, I'd like to talk about this. This collapse is predicted for 2040. But I was saying, okay, well, that might be very deep into the collapse cycle, but I'm saying May of this year in 2022 is when it's going to start. Now, it's not going to be an instant one-day event. It's going to be the start of it, and it's going to go through those months. June, July, when the planting season comes and the fertilizer shortages are realized, and we'll have good numbers by then of how much food will not grow on the planet based on how much fertilizer won't be available for all the farmers around the planet during the planting time in the Northern Hemisphere. That's an easy calculation, it's math. And same with the herbicides. So if there's grasses in the rows between the corn won't grow as tall because there's other weeds competing for the same nutrients that make the corn grow bigger, with bigger kernels on it, bigger heads, bigger ears. So that's another thing. So there'll be some decline on the yields per acre in the acre per bushels just based on weeds being in the rows. All right, so then you got to subtract that. But then we got Tonga. And this thing going on there, that ash went up to 128,000 feet on what they call the disc, or there was 3 levels of this volcano, and that second layer base, which went up to 128,000 feet, 30 kilometers in the atmosphere. The very center of it that blew out like a candle up into the upper atmosphere, I think it went up over 180,000 feet into the air. 180,000 feet up. That's 60 kilometers. That is really where Ransom was talking about, getting up to the edge of space. And that is going to have a cooling effect too, which is about going to be 0.5 degree to possibly 1 degree. And that's all Southern Hemisphere. And that's all crops that are, the swing producers to keep our planet fed. If that decreases far more than just the fertilizer shortages, you could have, just random factors, fertilizer shortage, herbicide shortage. If the world encountered the exact same thing, there would be output A. Because it's all simple math at that. Minus this, it'll be minus this much for everybody across this planet, pretty much equally. But now throw in this, we're going to have all that declines in global ag from fertilizer, herbicide, but now we're going to have the cooling that's only going to be exclusive in the Southern Hemisphere. So now you're adding in another whole variable, which, it's like 16 times more difficult than that simple one. North Hemisphere, South Hemisphere, how much fertilizer is not there, how much herbicide's not there, do the calculation based on the yield declines that they've already proven through science and thousands of research papers. If you don't give it this much fertilizer, only this much plant's going to grow. Like those studies have been done for 100 years. And they're looking at about a 12% decline in global agriculture just based on the fertilizer. Okay, But then that would have been before this Tonga eruption. Now you got to throw that thing in there, and it's going to decline way more in the southern hemisphere because you got not only that, so the plants aren't going to be as strong. They're going to be weaker because they don't have all the nutrients and fertilizers and things to keep them as strong as they were before. They're going to be, I wouldn't say diseased, but just not as, like malnourished to protect itself against other diseases. These plants will be in the southern hemisphere. Sulfur dioxide dropping, acid rain everywhere, ash cover and stuff. Even if it's a superfine misty ash, animals will eat that in the grass, and it'll, grind the teeth, cut out the gut a little bit. A lot of things will happen in the southern hemisphere. But Ransom, I'm going to talk about that after we get back from the break, because that is a game changer right there. So then we know the changes are here. Do you think it's a coincidence that COVID appeared right now when they need to control the food the most on the planet ever, coming into this season right now? Really, by the end of the year in 2022, it will absolutely be known that the food's not going to be enough to feed everybody unless the world's population declines. Oh, wait. Now the access to food is denied based on everything moving in the last 2 years. Plus, they can put police and soldiers at the place you can go get food. And then people aren't going to be here as much either. It's just, oh, those are the same ones that are relying on Social Security and Medicare in the future, too. Something's got to change in the formula, as Bill Gates said, did he not? I don't know, Ransom, but the whole Tonga thing is going to be interesting, big, huge, and very important to understand moving into the future.
Well, it seems that some of the states have come up with an answer to the future shortage of fertilizer, and that's, like several states now. This is an older article. I was looking for some updated ones. Washington legalizes human composting for use as fertilizer, but there are companies now in several states that are mixing this weird nanotech human feces and bodies to make fertilizer. So, there's that. But where was
the sewage plant is stealing our fertilizer? They're going to use it. See, our fertilizer got stolen from us. The sewage plant's stealing all what would be fertilizer to grow food for people, human manure. Obviously, you can break down the bacteria. You're not going to get sick. But they're stealing all that fertilizer that could be processed into fertilizer super easily. Oh, that's a lot of fertilizer. That's millions of tons of fertilizer throughout the United States from all the treatment plants. All they do is add a couple extra tanks, catchment, chemical processes, and then whack that bacteria out of there. Dan, they're stealing the fertilizer of the entire planet by compost.
Compost humans. It's Soylent Green.
David Dubayan here from Adapt 2030, right along with Ransom Godwin. 420 TV Freedomist Films. You want to check out his channel. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight. So we're going to take a little small break here and come on back about 3 minutes. We're going to continue the conversation. See you then.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? You enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's hyper thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
That's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour, Mini Ice Age Conversations. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm here with Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films. We're talking about how few dots connect from the AI to the fertilizer shortages to the Tonga eruption. And this thing happening in Canada with the driver strike. Now, most of this we couldn't talk about on YouTube. Other platforms might ban you for sharing some other post that you thought, hey, that was funny, or that was amusing, or hey, that's a little truth. I want to share it. Banned. So if you consider free speech something that you enjoy, this will be one of the last venues online. They've gone through it. Still here. So consider a donation to keep free speech alive, moving, and on the airwaves with the vibration of the voice coming through to give you truth. Maybe in my opinion, but it's up to you. You have to do your own research. You have to, I'll give you some opinions and things I think are true on what I think in my head. It's up to you. Believe, don't believe, or just go out and do your research and try to disprove it. See, that's what I love it. But you go out and try to disprove it. So the news will never tell you that. Go out and try to disprove what I just said. Nope. got to censor those people over there. You got to cut them off. They have too much. They're willing to have that argument. If too many people learn about that, hey, I'll debate you, then that's not good for society because most people don't understand money either. And that's why central banking is allowed to exist. Don't teach them about mathematics and money management in school. It's the same. But again, talk about these topics. Careers can be ruined. You are gone. We don't want your message out there. And who has the right to say that? Well, everybody, because it's your freedom of speech. Anybody has that right. You say whatever you want. If I don't agree, I'll leave the room. Thank you for expressing your opinion. If I don't agree, I'm out. I go somewhere else where it's happier. Whatever. But to say you can't talk, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That they're not. It's insanity is what it is. So let's poke a little bit of hole back to reality here through the insanity. freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio A right here, Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to midnight. Now, Ransom and I were talking about the Tonga eruption before the break, and get this. I'm on this. I used this chart in a video I did the other day. Tree ring density in the North Boreal forests. And this is in the Northern Hemisphere. And they go from the year 1400, which is like 1622 years ago, or 622 years ago, excuse me, I'm looking at the chart to read the chart, all the way up to present day. So you got 620 years of earthquakes. Major volcanoes, by the way, are rated by VEI 5, 6, and 7, which is a volcanic explosivity index. And they show you where the big eruptions are over the last 600 years. The VEI 6s, one VEI 7 at the Mount Tambora eruption. Although prior and even from then, it's all just been VEI 6 events. And Tonga was a VEI 6. It will be classified. You cannot tell me ash went 180,000 feet into the air. I don't care if it's a center cone or not. And that's what they call it, the center cone. If you look at any of those images, the updated ones, after that formation had a chance to form, after all the news hungry took the first pictures and said, this is the volcano that erupted, and they never did updates, you'll see that plume out of the center column rising up literally almost to space with ash in the atmosphere. And then it dropped over like a blue whale and exploded on the planet. And now it's going around the entire southern hemisphere. Sulfur dioxide and ash both. So that's a VEI 6. And I look back at 1453. Anybody historians out there? In 1601, another one that matches up with a giant decline in temperature. So I'm pulling out the eruptions that are on the biggest temperature declines on the chart. There's only about 5 that really those are cooler by noticeable amounts than the other ones. 1641 and 42 and 43. They had 3 eruptions of VEI 6. So think about that. 6 Tongas in 3 years, in addition to all the others. (1884) Tambora. Oh, that's right there too. 1912. What would that have been? 1912. And then Pinatubo way over here on the right, the last one. So looking at the chart here, every single time a VEI 6 happens, there's cooling. Now, hopefully it's limited to the southern hemisphere mostly, but it is so high in the atmosphere, it's definitely crossed the equatorial bands already. They're even getting like purple sunsets up in Indiana and Tennessee, where I'm from. I've been looking for the purple sunsets, and again, I'll say something. I have not seen them, although west of here, between Memphis and Nashville, there were some images coming out of quote-unquote purple sunsets, and they did look quite purple in the image, an indication of volcanic ash. But then I've been looking at the same sunsets on those same nights, looking for the purple on purpose, and I didn't see the purple. I'm disappointed. So I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt if it's going to pass the equator. Do your own research on this. There's tons of prior information about VEI 6s. Now, the current information, which is startling, is I'm looking for updates from the International Space Station because the first few days they put out the coolest photos, at least 4 of them. that showed the gigantic ash cloud in the upper atmosphere from the space station, all at least covering a quarter of the southern hemisphere, and that was like a week ago, right after the eruption. It's the International Space Station. It goes over the same areas every 2 hours, plus or minus. And they only have 4 photos of the biggest event to happen in the last 30 years for volcanism. This could be the most studied event ever in the history of our planet of a single eruption of this magnitude ever, and they only have 4 photos of it. Because the first 3 photos showed ash spreading across the full southern hemisphere already, that fast, blink of an eye. It's going across the equator, but how much is the question? So if there's fertilizer shortages, which are guaranteed now, I mean, it's across the media. Ag organizations are telling farmers to plant early, and then what you get is what you get later. So plant now. There's fertilizer available right this second to fulfill the needs. If you want to pre-fertilize your fields right now, there's enough for everybody to share. But there's not going to be enough exactly at that exact planting season coming up in like late April, mid-May, early May. And then the fertilizer run's going to be on, and it's going to be on to the point of getting on CNBC to spook the people that there's a fertilizer shortage, that your food's not going to be grown into the magnitude it was before. So see, then what happens? People did simple math and go, all right, agriculture is going to decline 12% globally because of the fertilizer shortage. Oh, wait, and herbicide shortages too. Those are running at about 10 to 12%. Wow, it's quirky, the exact same. Maybe it's the same supply chains. Anyway, 12% down. So that's going to decrease the yields across anywhere they can't get those herbicides because they need the targeted plant to be gone so they can get you such big ears of corn, such gigantic soybeans, such huge ears of corn, like massive ears. Do you realize the original species of corn that were the heirloom varieties were only, you know, a quarter of the size of the something you're getting today? Without those inputs of that fertilizer to get it at the right time with the exact NPK formula in there, for a better term, and to whack those weeds so there's no competition to get into the soil to take nutrients. So it's perfectly just for those plants, exact fertilizer, complete removal of any kind of competition at all. It's just that crop in just that field with the perfect amount of fertilizer because you can maintain it all with your inputs. Well, the input just got knocked out at the knees. So that's factor A around the entire planet. Now we're going to come back to this chart here, tree ring density, northern boreal forests. Southern hemisphere is going to experience the cooling also. So is the northern hemisphere eventually. What's going to happen then? It'll be cat's out of the bag ransom. It's totally out of the bag. When this sets in about 6 months from now, fertilizer shortages are May and June, the realization for the public. And then this Tonga eruption, the way it's going to limit food production will be saved as a wild card, an ace card for the elite to scare people right around September of this year. Then what? That's the question. Then what?
You know, like I was saying, I think that this all coming together, the death rate that we're about to look at, because I'm convinced that not just saying that it's culling, but, you know, all kinds of other factors leading us to right here. And I've been looking at this term, alkaline hydrolysis. And basically what that is all of these cities from coast to coast, and there's quite a few of them already have changed laws secretly to make it available or allow them to do it, is liquefied fertilizer productions made out of carcasses, humans. And in order to use, you know, enough of that to do anything, you'd need quite a few bodies. But that's okay.
And animals. Wait a second, Rancho.
Yeah,
and animals, because look how many animals are culling now. They're trying to make fertilizer out of the flesh to provide. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and this goes back to like 2010. They were already pushing this idea to do this. And it just makes me wonder, did they know even in 2010 back then that there would be an event where this topic would become something that people could palate, which is, we're having issues, there's food production, but that's okay. The municipalities have it under control. We're just going to turn the people that are dying into liquid fertilizer, and we'll just put that on everything and add a little nanotech to it, and it's healthier for you. That's the next thing that they're going to say. But obviously, on its face, it's a form of cannibalism. I mean, there's no other way to put that. And already, us using cloning and different things for flavor crystals. I'm not going to name the companies so we don't get in trouble, but there's all these companies that are using this for, the one version of it, which is cloned human, and they're putting that in products. And, these are old lines of people, which makes me think about what we were talking about last time when we brought up the subject of donation and blood donors and all of that. And I remember you said specifically that you were talking about, people that get organ transplants and things like that, or blood transfusions tend to pick up these new characteristics or feel, a different vibration within them. Now, we've seen the first human implant of a human hybrid, a chimera heart put in there from a human hybrid pig. What kind of changes do you think that would change the society? We joke a lot about sheep and wolves and whether or not you're a wolf or a sheep, but think about when they're introducing farm animals into the genetic mix of humans, and then on the same time they're getting us to eat products that in a way come from humans. So in a sense, it's cannibalism. And they know that this bothers people on a spiritual level. Whether or not it actually does something to their spirit, I know thinking about it does something to their spirit. So once it gets out that these municipalities, states already have these plans in the works for massive die-offs, and what they're going to do with the bodies when that happens is, a scary thought. But what would be so big that they would plan this, that they would plan on using fertilizer as if they knew they were going to need the fertilizer itself, and then on top of that the die-off. So all of these.
No, you hit it on the head. That's so correct. They planned for the fertilizer that they would need. That's why you need a certain percentage of culling of the cattle. Well, you have to create a condition that you need to remove 1 million of the herd out of here because you can't get the supply to them to feed them with the corn, so they're going to starve, or you have to euthanize them. Or the birds. Oh, it's another strain. Okay, we got to get this many birds. Okay. And then, nursing homes, then the vid. And then you got all these other numbers adding in there for flesh equals fertilizer. So what you're talking about is really nefarious. I mean, they understood the need for fertilizer coming in to this point where global agriculture is going to suffer. And it's going to decline because not all the inputs are there to produce the most food. So what if there was already a percentage already set aside, like birds will be 6% of the global fertilizer need if we liquefy them in terms of cattle will be 12% of the global, and then you're going through. Ostrich farming will be 0.2%, but we'll use it for South Africa. There's specifics, but they're taking little flesh and doing calculations on what those would be needed to turn it into fertilizer to replace the fertilizer that's being lost. But once that runs its course, they've run out of even that plan B fertilizer. And, I'll tell you, there's not enough think about the human waste. I'm telling you, those recycling plants for water are huge possibilities for fertilizer production. But my personal story, I was able to get some mushroom compost delivered out to my farm. And the driver told me that after the 1st of February, you can't get any more from their mushroom facilities because somebody's bought it all from February 1st through the end of the year. And if you're anybody in the public, please rush now to get it because you can't sell it, can't give it. Everything closed to public, nothing else. Everything coming out of there is going to one buyer. So, that's another substitute there. But you look at these possibilities of getting replacement fertilizers. I mean, how many chickens are there to be able to fertilize a field across the planet with the reduction in all the bird herds. Even if you were just going to have the birds not to raise eggs, just to produce the poo because it's so good for agriculture. And instead of having an egg production facility, the eggs would be the bonus. You're actually farming the manure out of the chicken, the droppings. That's the gold, not the egg, because the fertilizer is far more valuable. So if you're looking at chickens in a different way of fertilizer producers at scale in some of these farms versus the eggs they produce or the meat they produce, that's like the lowest thing on the totem pole that's worth value is their meat or their egg. The highest thing of value is their droppings. Oh man. And they're trying to eradicate that. That's crazy. Like they're trying to starve. Ransom, it's on purpose. They're trying to starve people out. They're trying to. It's all the supply chain breakdown. It's all on purpose. I just realized that. Oh, how could I be so silly not to believe everything was so planned? Maybe I'm too much of an optimist that it can't be that planned and all woven together that tightly. Come on, really? Like what kind of coordination does that take? That takes AI to do that, not people. They leak secrets.
Well, it is a reality that they're using food as a weapon. Here's an article from InfoWars pointing out one of the draconian measures in Canada. They're going to start accompanying customers at the Walmarts to make sure they don't buy anything other than food and pharma because they haven't got the jab. So if you don't have the jab, you can't go in there and buy things to, like mason jars or
peanut butter.
Peanut butter. Well, you can get that because that's food. But if you wanted to grow your own food and you wanted to buy other things, you can't buy that. You're going to be accompanied by a little brown shirt Walmart employee to make sure you only buy the food and the pharmaceutical products. So why would that's just one more thing getting you used to the idea that you're going to have some little guy or case manager or a robot, accompanying you to match your little rations.
That knows your facial recognition. They're going to follow you.
Absolutely. And everything's going to that now. Actually, the facial recognition system, China has paved the way for it. And now you're hearing all of these other world leaders, kind of kissing the butt of China as far as their lockdown and totalitarian measures. Now, we're whining and complaining about them as far as territorial boundaries, but as far as concentration camps, civil rights, human rights, no, we're not going to say nothing about none of that. And, China is always quickly paced right behind Japanese companies on everything. So if Japan comes out with a cool tablet from one of their companies, then China's going to have a, slightly less as good tablet that they sell too. So when it comes to robots, we already know China is deeply invested in this. They have islands made out of robots out in the ocean. They can manufacture these things way faster than us. And not to mention, when the actual physical or kinetic wars start between military devices, a lot of that is going to be AI driven and AI ran already. We've talked about that in the past, but they already have these platforms ready. The problem is only one country has stockpiled rare earth elements, and that's the same country that everybody says should be the role model of the world government. And it's also the country that's stockpiling food right now. So just that alone, and these little skirmishes to keep you distracted in the shatter belt there along the breakaways and the Russian borderland is where they'll keep the attention. Meanwhile, everyone's setting up for complete shutdown, including China, who by every estimate is now surpassed the United States not only as a superpower, but has a bigger economy. And, they're working on the military aspect as we speak.
Where would you control first, though? Are you going to control for the now, or are you going to control for the future of what would be more valuable? This is the head fake right now. Because if you look at previous coolings, you're going to see how the governments are going to respond. If you look at previous cooling sessions of our world's global history, you'll see population migration. You'll see collapse of economies and restructuring of economies, trade and barter moving, but then governments are always changing during these times too, because, well, can't provide for the citizens. They want different leadership every single time. Never in history has it not occurred up until now. But we're living the now. So, when we look back in the past, it shall be as well. If you're controlling the now, what would you be controlling? Oh, the citizens trying to get into food. Oh, inflation's killing their wages. Oh, they're going to be so angry about, okay, blah, blah, blah. Get them out of the way. Or are you controlling where the best grow zones on the planet will be for food 5, 10, 15 years from now, putting those in place to control that, using the guy as an excuse of now to get into places, make laws, move in? What's the long game with all this? Because, those planners are planning out for beyond this period of time. So this might be the great distraction instead of the great narrative of the Great Reset. Maybe it's the great distraction for what is future, the best areas on the planet that will provide food, because those that provide food will be the richest on the planet, and they'll also have the strongest countries because their people are eating. Yay. They have calories to actually do stuff instead of laying on the sidewalks because they're near starvation. That's more valuable than oil. Way more valuable than oil. Way more valuable. The most important thing is food. If you don't have food, you don't have a society. You don't have a country. You don't have a functioning government. You have no functioning society, and everything has broken apart at the seams. Is the number one thing on people's minds is getting food. Because they're so hungry that they just seek it out as a mechanism for survival in the human species. I had a friend of mine, his name was Roger, and he went on this rice diet. And all he did was eat rice for like 5 days and drank a ton of water and, it was basically a liquid diet with rice, but pure white rice. And he was saying, man, I was getting real hungry at the end there. And, like the 5th day, all I could think about was just eating. And I was like, well, you're eating rice and drinking a bunch of, really thin liquids and stuff. He's, no, you don't get it. I was so hungry. So if it's like that, and that's the person who's focused on the goal of cleaning out the body and cleansing it, and was still like, oh, it was so difficult. All he did, even woke up out of dreams looking for food, thinking about it. And this is somebody who was very focused on that's the goal. Don't eat the food and go on like a very minimal diet of just pure white rice and just water and a few broth liquids. That's it for 5 days. And he was getting that hungry anyway, even consuming what we consider like almost nothing based nutrient, barely, almost like, soup rations from World War II to the prisoners or something. And he was complaining and explaining how hungry he was, thinking it, breathing it, feeling it, dreaming it, how hungry. His next thing, every time I'm hungry, I gotta get food, I'm hungry, I gotta get food. What's going to happen to the average person when they're not even the focused person? You don't have food, you don't have a society, period. There's no civilization. At the point that the food production stops, like the current civilization ceases, because everything that connected it as a quote unquote civilization, all those ties are going to be severed, and it's going to go completely back to very little connectivity and starvation, food, whatever happens, or some countries will be better with growth areas. It'll all just shatter back to zero and then reform itself after the food returns. Now you're saying that they're saying the world's going to end in 2040 or something like this. What about from now until 2030? Because we got to go through that first. So when do you think the craziest changes are coming, Ransom? You think it's going to be this year, next year, 24, 25, 26, 8, 30? What are you feeling?
I think it's going to be in the next couple of years, and I tell you why. You were talking about what are those things that you want to control in the future if you're going to steer a change in civilization, and they're predicting the end of what we call civilization, according to that AI that predicted it. But what's really happening right now is, think about it, is just like in Roman times, or you can think in the 30s in Europe. I won't name the thing because, we get in trouble. But both of those takeovers use this idea of controlling women first and then getting control of the children, and then the men follow. But what I'm trying to say is, right now, like, here's this article from InfoWars that's talking about speech therapists say there's a 364% surge in baby and toddler referrals because of masks. So these children are learning.
What? Wait, okay, stop again. You need to say that again. I was listening, but can you say it again?
Yeah, okay. So there's a 364% surge in baby and toddler referrals to doctors about speech therapists and things like that. So they're losing the ability to communicate, all of these children, and it's because of a situation that we've created. So first you have these children that are getting rewired daily through electronic devices, phones, etc. They're learning to communicate with the AI faster than they're communicating with the world around them. And then you add pandemic, you add lockdowns, you add face masks, vaccines, all of these rules, regulations, and the child is left with not being able to communicate with anyone real. And not only that, they're cut off from facial expressions. They get used to being distanced. And, I know we talked a lot about last year, we talked about the little fields around the human being that are about a 6-foot, radius around a human, where our energies kind of intersect. So the children are losing out on that. They're being processed at schools where their education's being taken away and replaced with social engineering. And then on top of that, they're being treated like small prisoners, all the way down to the gag. So you have a whole generation of children that follow a generation of cultural revolution children. So now we went from the cultural revolution generation that only took 20 years to gain control of those children. And now we're changing laws, we're changing society because we've convinced these children these different ideas, from gun control to global warming. I mean, you could pick a subject, but they're changed. So these people are now having children that they mask up and segregate from everyone else. And those children are learning to only communicate via, electronic devices. So this is their entire world now. And then that goes into the future of the new, way of things, which is social control with credit scores, whether or not you're behaving, facial recognition everywhere you go, the ability to buy or not buy products based on your personal choices. And then these people also will have a lacking ability to facilitate their rights, their human rights, their constitutional rights in any meaningful way to anyone, because they have been robbed of basic human skills and communication skills. But not just that, they're not teaching them any kind of, skill related to being a human being on the planet Earth. So it's a whole generation of lost children following a generation of sick and dying people that have all the knowledge and had the old world there. So they're right there. You can see the split in the species. And it's not just a fundamental split in the genetics that will change, but also the entire way, the social bond of a civilization through communication of human emotions, feelings, and art, and all of these things are being flushed down the toilet and replaced with AI learning, rules, regulations. So everything about our children's life in the future will be totally controlled by an AI system, whether you believe that AI system is now designing itself or it's still being controlled by a human being. But just like the chess analogy I used, and the idea that the AIs of different kinds are not only censoring humans for these companies, so they're already being, started out where they limit human knowledge already. So if any of these start to do what they have in the past, which is start forming their own language, the AI, if this hasn't happened already, they necessarily would limit the human intellect, because let's face it, humans are the only rival to an AI-controlled communist system that's more like an ant colony, versus civilization as we know it. So even if human beings stay on the earth for the next 40 or 50 years, the way we live on the earth is obviously and fundamentally changing, not only from the way we live our basic lives, but the genetic, makeup of what it means to be a Homo sapien sapien is being changed from the epigenetics level from our environment and our food, which is being also manipulated in a different genetic way through gene editing, GMO foods, and then now we're in the era of forced medication that may or may not be designed by the AI itself. And I'll leave it there.
Well, it's kind of interesting that there's a 3.5 times increase in child speech therapy because they do have to wear masks so they can't see verbal signals and hear clearly. Think about us as humans, how that same thing has been put on for hundreds and hundreds of years that we didn't know was there, invisible masks of us not understanding the signals from nature, from the universe, from the cosmos, from the Birkeland currents, from the energy changes, the energetic particle changes. I mean, obviously somebody felt that stuff. So there's just giant temples everywhere. They are surviving cataclysms. Somebody tapped into it. But if that's a 3.6 or 3.5 times increase in that particular thing affecting a child development in just 2 years, that's very similar to what I was saying with the AI. If it's 1 million times smarter than the human now, next year it'll be 2 million times smarter. The following year, 4 million times smarter. And the following year, 8 million times smarter, which would have meant equivalent with the human race at 8 billion people. So what if this is going to go 3.6% times 3, and we're already above 10, times 10 is 100? Then what? Because if they're not even able to communicate with the people prior to them, see, that was weird the way you said that, because if they're having problems interpreting speech because of the masks and the kids in schools, what I say, they might understand it, but when they utter it back, I wouldn't understand it. Because they're cutting out one chain of the understanding of that already. That's also nefarious, to create a new language within the language that the older people would not understand. But the younger kids would understand the language of the day, but they wouldn't be able to effectively communicate back to the older. Because the older would be like, what? This new language is forming out of these younger kids. I can't understand the thing they're saying. They're muffled and they're stalking. But maybe that's the way that the new language is muffled like that. Because, I tell you one thing. Talking about Denisovans and Neanderthals, it's really weird. And this thought just popped in my head right as I was thinking that, with the mumbling like this. So, and this is an OBSS assessment. This is like talking about bipedal hominids, proven species already, so much empirical data that it would just bury Mount Everest of really what's out there showing that a bipedal species lives in our forests. A bipedal hominid long before we were here. But the thing is, the language that is spoken is a mumbled, muffled language, just like you would expect with child wearing masks after 10, 20 years of that, how they would talk so differently, that muffled like, that's crazy, man. Because we talked about the Denisovan Neanderthal split, but the way that a lot of the Sasquatch are described as speaking, even in recordings, is that muffled, and it almost sounds like an Eastern sort of like Chinese mixed language with Cherokee or something. And if you can mix Chinese and Cherokee together, that's kind of what it sounds like, but a real muffled like. But you need to understand one of those languages, like muffled.
Yeah, and then the whole connection to the devices. That itself, people joke around about, well, Grandpa couldn't figure out the VCR. We're so far beyond that now that the toddlers could be learning things that, with the operating systems. And then you got to go into all of the deep things that they do through these feeds, from flicker rate to music, colors. They have scientifically found a way to alter moods, feelings, and thought processes through these media outlets. But it's not just that. It's like something electrical. And, you know, when we talk about the electric universe and how they put up all of these, you know, cages basically around every human. I mean, you live in a little electronic cage. There's wires all in your house. You got all of these devices, and you're inside that, blocked out of the actual nature vibration or frequency that's coming from the electricity around you, from the plants, from the ground. You know, you hear so many people talk about how important it is to ground your feet right into the soil and what that does to the human. And these are all of the things that have been cut off seemingly on purpose. I mean, even think about your shoes. I know this sounds weird, but your shoes, even all of these new plastics and rubbers that they make shoes out of, all around the world, people are wearing these cut off from the ground, like, you know, they're not grounded at all. And then on top of that, they're being broadcasted these different frequencies and electromagnetic fields of varying, you know, differences there that are affecting them all at the same time. And on top of that, glued into some kind of device that is, you know, basically narrating their life or telling them where to go, when to go, what the fads are, what's, you know, when you need to get medicated. And then we saw in India how many millions of people would instantly change their personal views if they were about to be cut off from the matrix.
That's even if you know you're in it. If you have to know you're in the matrix before you realize you can get cut off from it. But if you've been trained on paper dollars and internet connectivity, then what? You know, it's you know, I look at some of these things and say, all right, I stumbled across something that I heard about many years ago through a fax that I found today that brought me back to, I'd seen that map back in the 1990s, man. There was this red and yellow map of all of the United States, and it showed which areas would be habitable zones and which areas humans could use, and there would be like high density, like you're talking about living in a city, little wire box 5G zones, and it was clearly marked. You know, you could easily see the red and the yellow, but it looked like overall there was probably half the U.S. that was off limits, where no humans could go, no usage, no anything. And you looked at that and go, that's impossible. How could they ever get away with that? And there's no. So I thought, you know, even back then I was like, I was that naive to believe that, no, it would never happen like that. But knowing that after the economy collapses here with one of these cycle resets, grand solar minimums, food reductions, it checks all the boxes. See, they're going to have something behind the new economy. Now, gold and silver, that's a no-brainer. Cryptocurrency, that's an easy one too. Like, it's already being set up. Oh, Bitcoin's bad, Bitcoin's good, Bitcoin's bad. Oh, ban it here, oh, ban it there, take it out. Oh, every story might crash it a little bit, but it's always back up. So if you were to follow that map that I thought was hoax and bogus back in the 1990s, looking at that red and yellow usage map, I'm thinking Carbon Market is now talking about the exact same thing that I thought those guys working off their rockers talking about it. To take off areas of the forest. And this is how it works. It's super simple. And once you see that red and yellow map, you'll understand what's going on with that. So currently, if you have extra land, family land, whatever it is, you have an extra 100 acres, it's just forest, it's been in the family for 100 years, you never use it, you're not going to cut it, you're just going to leave it as such. It's up near the base of a mountain anyway. Grandpa bought it back in the 1900s with a cabin on it, but we got all these acres for like $100. Yeah. They'll pledge that forest and say, all right, this forest, these 100 acres, we're going to put into your database. And you know what? Those 100 acres sequester carbon. CO2 is taken out of the air with our forest. And then if you pay us to do that, we'll make a certificate out of it and sell it to like a factory in China that'll say, look, we carbon credits. Okay, well, maybe you're in a different hemisphere where the air doesn't circulate, whatever. It still works like that. So they take this 100 acres, and what they do is run over it with LiDAR, and they can get a good idea of the species density in an acre. And there's already been tons of peer-reviewed research on how much an apple tree will sequester, how much a pine tree will sequester, how much will an oak tree, a cedar tree, a gum tree, name your any tree, hickory tree, chestnut tree, whatever, in the forest, whatever the density is, they can measure the different densities of the trees. And then with current models, they can say, all right, well, as an average, we know how much each species can sequester each year. In a species dense forest of 100% of itself, it can sequester this. It's an average of all these trees. So it'll equal this much CO2 sequestered. And in the current carbon market, every ton you take out is worth about $8 on the open market today. I do believe the final total, they wanted to run to $200 to be parity. And see, I never understood when they said, when it reaches $200, parity. Okay, to what? They never talked about that. But now I understand it's going to be the carbon pricing to give a new base layer to the new economy. The 200 is what they need to give a new base layer. So think about back to that red and yellow map. So if they could take half the US and pledge it to the new registry of carbon market, carbon sequestration on forests, and you can see where those red areas are where they're not going to let anybody live. And then they're going to multiply that by how many tons of CO2. And that's going to be the base of, instead of having jobs taken away by robots, it'll be that is the base of the economy. Because companies that do exist and the people that are still left will still have to buy, sell, and trade. But from that point forward, like now, it's all going to be based on a fictitious market of carbon credits to restart a global economy after you're talking about like 2025, 2030, 2040. I mean, how long do you think economically this thing can roll out? Now, this is definitely not a one-year plan here we're talking about, but I mean, looking into the future, how far out do you think this is before realistically, when the base of the carbon market collapses like all these other narratives have, they run their good period of time, 10, 20 years. But once that collapses and that carbon market's no longer worth anything and there's no trust in it, there has to be something else beyond that 15 years later. But if you can knock out communications to everybody, maybe 20 years later, I'm not sure. Those maps make sense now. Now I really feel that there's something there behind those maps now. I'm going to delve into them and maybe even look in and do a little more research.
They're having a hard time right now. I mean, I think you could go over to Drudge Report right now, and some of the top stories right now are about things that don't fit the narrative, like Arctic chill set for Miami, East Coast braces for blizzard bomb, Kansas hit with record snow blast, right? And then you got Jerusalem blanketed with white. Thousands of fish die from thermal shock as cold sweeps Greece. All over the planet, you're having stories about it being ultra cold, super cold, record-breaking temperatures from Siberia to Canada. But yet it's global warming and you're bad and you need to eat bugs and, all of these things that they keep pushing. But when you just look at their own articles, you can see, as somebody famously said, they're sharticles. Basically, they just tell you, things that are not true. At the same time as they'll tell you that there's record-breaking snow, they'll say it's caused by global warming and that there was some kind of record-breaking heat spot in another place, refusing to kind of, correlate reality with their narratives. But what do you think that they're going to do really when people are literally hungry, cold, and the government's still trying to push on them that there's climate change caused by them? And as well as I do, like hunger, cold, you're not going to care what somebody thinks about you when you're cold. You're going to light something on fire to stay warm. You know what I mean? So that's going to cause a whole nother round of skirmishes between governments telling people that they can't do things because they've made laws to outlaw energy. And you can see that in the U.S. especially right now, all of the energy reduction plans that they've been putting in to save the environment everywhere. We've been shutting down coal. We've been, making electricity more and more expensive. Even the gas is going up, and all at the same time as super inflation. And the Fed is just now barely, wanting to get into interest rates because I think they know that dollar bubble, the whole dollar bubble is about to pop, just like Ron Paul has been saying for decades. We're there now, and they're trying to kind of shun people away from things like cryptocurrency. But think about if you have all of these cryptos and you wait through the storm that's happening right now, because all the markets are down. But when that increases like it did last year, what was Bitcoin was really down. It was like at 30,000, but then it went all the way up to 60. And you imagine all the millions that got transferred right then from people that were just waiting for that. And then what happens when all of these trillions and trillions of paper money that the Fed has been printing over the last couple of years, it's starting to show in the economy. And then at the same time, coincidentally, we're going to have a pandemic, a food problem with growing, and then you factor in the earth actually changing, nothing to do with us, but just going through the period that it's going through. And they have people completely brainwashed to not be prepared for what's happening now. I don't think it's, everybody keeps pushing this date forward. I see the changes happening in real time. It's kind of scary because I know for a fact where I live that they are building up for a military response. Like we've been hearing the nighttime exercises, dropping sonic booms at night, scaring us all, out of, if you're sleeping, you get thrown out of your bed. What was that? Was that the end? No, it wasn't the end. They're just practicing for the end.
Maybe it's AI pretending that it's the end, so you get that same feeling of you're just feeling and describe, but that's the outcome it needs to push something else and hit the billiard ball to go to the next thing, And it'll play out three moves down from you and the next person down there in front of their screens. A continual pinball, billiard ball bouncing across the face of the earth. But, if you're going to mention eating insects, I am going to say I prefer to eat the animals that froze standing up and in place in Turkey because of the extreme record cold, because they're sheep, frozen solid instantly, and a fox and horses instantly in place. And their next step, mid-step, they froze instantly like the mastodons did. I'd rather eat those because they're flash frozen than I would eat bugs. But, we're seeing a lot of things that are not really panning out. And it seems like it's the year of the non-pan out for the narratives over the last 30 years, 50 years. And they keep you ever so hopeful with all the new Gasaria and all these things. The old world's collapsing. They're getting you hoping for some kind of new world, but disguised in there is the new money system, the new value system. And, you brought up cryptocurrency. We're used to thinking about it now in dollars, like you say, dollars, like there's an equivalent value that you and I know as now, that we could change one of whatever for to get some money to go buy a yacht, groceries, fuel, whatever, at today's value. What happens when the economy crashes completely and this whole new economy is set up with carbon market pricing, gold and silver, cryptocurrency, and it's the base of the new market? So where we sit today with dollar deflation in 2022, I think it's like 1 cent or even less than 1 cent of purchasing power of what that same dollar had in 1913 when the Federal Reserve started itself. Because, you always hear those stories, from great-grandparents or grandparents telling about their grandparents. They would go out to dinner and have a fine dinner and, everything we would think today, bottles of wine, a huge dinner and everything, and it'd be like $10, $20. Back in 19, and it's like, whoa, that's like a lavish feast, full on, bro. There's no way you could do that today and not really break the bank for thousands of dollars. And for them, $20, $20, you wouldn't even think twice about spending $20. But back then you would have. We're like spending thousands of dollars on purchasing power now. So think about that. Cryptos are going to be the new money. So one will not equal $1 we think of like right now. We think of any coin you can think of that's $1. And I'm not talking stable coins. Algorand would be a good one. It's jumping between like low 70s up to $1.50, somewhere in that range, that kind of coin. You're looking at it as like $1 coin. What if it's $1 in the new economy and the new money with a new valuation? About $1 will really buy you 100x what you're getting now, and just the conversion rate of going to a new sound money where 1 equals 1 with no inflation, compared to what is stripped out of you yearly with, well, inflation has to happen through the central banking system. That's not even with it's a private entity. It's not a federal anything. They're stripping your money 2% per year just as it's baked in. Who lets them get away with that kind of theft? The house would come down anyway, especially the food is going to be the main catalyst to bring and rip the chair out from under the food. And you see every time the food goes, everything else follows in line. So whoever knew this, knew the cycles were here. They knew the food would get short. They knew how people would react. They're trying to throw things in front of it like, oh, COVID, to stop everybody from migrating, which has happened every grand solar minimum. People migrate. Millions of people moved around the planet. And the last one, 1600s, 100 million people moved around. But now we have 8 billion people, so it'd probably be like 2 billion people would move around. But that got stopped. No COVID. No, okay, can't move. All right, so they already checked one box because that's happened everywhere. Population migration, people move into different areas where the economy's better, food's cheaper, life is cheaper. It's all about the food and energy. We're at it again. So somebody gamed the cycle. They knew exactly when this was going to happen. So they planned out, these nefarious planners had put things in advanced position of knowing, okay, food will be probably reduced around 21, 22. And then how do we control that? Okay, well, we're going to have to put people all around the supermarkets. Now, how are we going to explain that? Oh, okay. Well, you need the vaccine. Okay. We're going to have to limit what they can buy. Okay, well, how are we going to explain that? Okay, limits in the stores. COVID. And then everything is the base off of this. So this year, knowing that fertilizers, there'll be less food and less availability this year moving forward into 2023. Sure. So how governments will respond. And now the popular uprisings are happening. So how are governments going to respond? Or was the government's plan and allow these uprisings to stop, to change the narrative? COVID's gone, withdraw the vaccines. Now we're back to normal. It's just about the food. We're not doing anything. And then it'll transit somehow into over food again. I don't know. Is one meant as a catalyst for the other? I'm curious now. Does it really take, does it take one country in the world to bring all the trucks together finally? After all this time, after all these hundreds of years, finally at this point, they decide to do it? Maybe people have snapped and the consciousness reversal is here. I don't know. I just don't know. Ransom, thanks for joining me tonight, man. Sign us off. Give me some good thoughts until the music plays.
Well, I was just thinking we could forget about all that food stuff and prepare and stuff. No, I'm just joking. You should probably grow 4 to 5 times the amount that you thought you were gonna grow this year just to do it. But on other note, we could just forget all of that and pay attention to the guy that brought you brain chips and told you to fear AI, yet he makes a product to directly link you to the internet. He wants you to have a robot in your home. He's the guy that's going to be the first guy to trash the moon with some litter as a SpaceX rocket. He's going to crash on the moon. What do you think about that?
Who is that, Mr. Rogers?
Musk.
Charlie Brown. Klaus. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you for spending your time. David Divine, Ransom Godwin. See you next week. Grow food.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
What the heck is the truth, Jihad?
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
upon my wired chair, full of broken thoughts I cannot repair. Beneath the stains of time, the feeling disappears. You are someone else. I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. The needle tears a hole, the old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end. And you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. I wear this crown of thorns upon my liar's chair, full of broken